Hello guys. Have you ever looked at a victory that felt like a cage and realized the only way out was to burn down everything you were told to build? This is the story of that fire. The paper felt heavier than stone. Its crisp, embossed letterhead shimmered under the desk lamp, a beacon of a future he never asked for. Georgetown University, School of Law. The words blurred into a single, suffocating pronouncement of his life sentence. Leo's heart didn't soar. It fractured. A quiet, seismic crack that started in his chest and spiderwebbed through his entire being. This was it. The culmination of 18 years of curated excellence. The straight A's, the debate club victories, the joyless internship at his father's firm. It was all for the single sheet of paper. He ran a thumb over his father's name, already mentally engraved on a brass plaque next to his own. Leo Vance-esque. It looked like a tombstone. A wave of nausea rolled through him, so potent he had to grip the edge of the mahogany desk his parents had bought him for his 16th birthday. It wasn't a desk. It was a workstation for their ambition. He could hear them downstairs, the clink of wine glasses against crystal. They were celebrating his success. His triumph. He felt like an astronaut watching his home planet shrink into a cold, indifferent star, the tether to his own soul snapping clean off. The air in his room, once a sanctuary, was now thin, unbreathable. Every poster, every book, every object felt like a prop on a stage he could no longer stand. The acceptance wasn't a key unlocking a door. It was the final brick sealing him into a tomb, and the most terrifying part was that he was the one holding it. This wasn't failure. This was damnation by success. Survival now meant destroying the perfect son they had so carefully, so lovingly constructed. The weeks that followed were a masterclass in dissociation. Leo moved through his life like a ghost haunting someone else's body. At the dinner table, his father's monologues about case law and legal precedent washed over him. "This is your legacy, Leo," his father would say, his voice thick with a pride that felt like a physical weight. "You're not just building a career, you're continuing a dynasty." His mother would smile, her eyes gleaming with the reflected glory of her son's preordained future. "We sacrificed so much for this moment," she'd add, her words the silken threads of a gilt-woven tapestry. They weren't villains. That would have been easier. They were loving, dedicated architects of his misery, convinced they were building him a palace. He began taking the long way home from school, wandering through the city's industrial underbelly. The clean, sterile lines of his suburban neighborhood felt like a lie. Down here, amidst the rust and the grime, things were honest. One afternoon, he stumbled upon an alley that bloomed with color. A mural exploded across the brickwork, a chaotic symphony of impossible creatures and jagged, desperate letters. It was raw. It was alive. And standing before it, a young woman named Maya was adding a streak of electric blue with a spray can. She didn't look like an artist. She looked like a fighter. Her knuckles were stained with paint, and her eyes held an intensity that both scared and mesmerized him. She caught him staring. "Lose your way, prep school?" she asked, her voice raspy, unpolished. It wasn't an insult. It was a genuine question. Leo just shook his head, unable to form words. He pointed at the wall. "Did you do this?" "Some of it," she said, turning back to her work. "It's a conversation. Someone starts it, someone else adds a thought." He stayed for an hour, watching her paint. He didn't speak. He just watched the can in her hand, the way she moved, the absolute certainty in her actions. She wasn't asking for permission, she was claiming the space. The next day he came back, and the next. He learned to keep quiet, to just observe. Maya rarely spoke to him, but her presence was a constant, deafening question. "What do you have to say?" One evening, driven by an impulse he didn't understand, Leo bought a cheap sketchbook and a set of charcoal pencils. He didn't go to the alley. He went to the old abandoned train yard at the edge of town. There, surrounded by skeletal husks of steel, he began to draw. It wasn't good. His hands, so steady in debate, so precise in writing essays, were clumsy and hesitant. He drew twisted metal, fractured concrete, the angry, defiant weeds that grew through the cracks. He drew the things he felt, broken, rusted, overgrown. For the first time in his life, he was not performing. He was bleeding onto a page. The secret became his oxygen. He lived a double life. By day, he was Leo Vance, future legal shark. He discussed LSAT scores and housing options in Georgetown with his parents. He smiled, he nodded, he played the part. But at night, he would slip out, his sketchbook his only confidant, and pour his silent screams into charcoal and ink. The drawings were dark, unsettling. They were honest. They were him. The inevitable collision came on a Saturday night. He'd lost track of time, consumed by a large piece he was sketching on a forgotten factory wall. When he crept back into his house, past 2 a.m, the lights were on. His father was standing in the living room, his mother sitting on the sofa, her face a mask of pale, tear-streaked disappointment. His sketchbook was open on the coffee table. "What is this, Leo?" His father's voice was dangerously calm. It was the voice he used in court just before eviscerating a witness. He gestured to the open page, a distorted, screaming face rendered in violent charcoal strokes. "It's just a hobby," Leo stammered, his blood turning to ice. "A hobby." His father's laugh was a sharp, ugly bark. "This is filth. It's morbid. It's pointless. Your mother and I have dedicated our entire lives to." Giving you a future, a real future, and you're wasting your time with this garbage? It's not garbage to me, Leo heard himself say, the words feeling foreign in his own mouth. It's not for you to decide, his father roared, his composure finally shattering. You are 18 years old. You think you know what's best for you. You have no idea what the world is like. We are giving you a path, a gilded path, and you spit on it for this. He picked up the sketchbook and, for a horrifying second, Leo thought he would tear it in two. He didn't. He simply closed it and slid it across the table, a gesture of profound dismissal. You will go to Georgetown, his father said, his voice dropping back to that terrifying calm. You will become a lawyer. You will make us proud. This adolescent nonsense ends now. Am I clear? Leo looked at his mother. Her eyes pleaded with him. Don't do this to us. Don't throw it all away. The weight of her love, of her sacrifice, was a chain around his neck. It felt rational to give in. It felt safe. It was the path of least resistance, the path back to their approval. He looked at the closed sketchbook. It held the only part of him that was real. Yes, Leo whispered, the lie tasting like ash. You're clear. For a month, he tried. He threw the sketchbook in the dumpster behind his house. He deleted the photos of the mural from his phone. He bought books on constitutional law. He sat at his mahogany desk and stared at the pages, but the words swam before his eyes. He saw twisted metal. He saw screaming faces. He saw Maya's defiant eyes. He was suffocating again, but this time it was worse, because now he knew what fresh air felt like. The lie was eating him from the inside out. He started losing weight. Dark circles formed under his eyes. He looked in the mirror one morning and didn't see Leo Vance, future lawyer. He saw a terrified prisoner. That was the trigger. It wasn't a moment of grand inspiration. It was a moment of cold, stark terror. He realized that if he got on that plane to Georgetown, the boy in the mirror would die, not physically, but in every way that mattered. The choice became simple, not easy, but simple. It was their life for his. He retrieved his sketchbook from the grime of the dumpster. It was stained and damp, but the drawings were intact. He spent the next week not just drawing, but planning. He researched art schools with late admissions, looked for cheap apartments in cities he'd never seen, calculated how much money he had saved. It wasn't a dream. It was an escape plan. The cost was immense. He would lose his family, his financial security, the only life he had ever known. He was trading a gilded cage for a terrifying, empty freedom. And he knew he had to pay the price. He chose the moment carefully. Sunday dinner. The weekly ritual. He waited until his father had finished a particularly long toast to the Vance legal legacy. Leo didn't raise his voice. He didn't bring out his art like a weapon. He simply placed the Georgetown acceptance letter on the table next to his plate. Beside it, he placed a deferral form, already filled out. I'm not going, he said. The words hung in the air, sucking all the warmth from the room. His father stared at the form, then at Leo, a slow, dangerous flush creeping up his neck. What did you just say? I'm not going to law school, Leo repeated, his voice steady, though his heart was hammering against his ribs. I'm deferring my admission. I'm going to apply to art school. His mother made a small, wounded sound. Leo, no. After everything we talked about. This isn't about you, Leo said, looking directly at his father, the hardest thing he'd ever done. This is about me, and I'm not going to be a lawyer. I don't know if I'll be a good artist. I don't know if I'll fail. I probably will, but it will be my failure, not yours. The explosion he expected never came. Instead, his father's face went cold, impassive. He looked at Leo not with anger, but with a kind of clinical pity, as if observing a stranger who had made a catastrophic life choice. Fine, his father said, the single word guillotine. If you want to throw your life away, do it. But don't expect me to pay for it. You walk out that door, you are on your own. It wasn't a negotiation, it was an exile. Leo knew this was the price. He had lost their approval, their support, the foundation of his entire world. But as he stood up from the table, he felt the immense weight on his shoulders finally lift. He had lost their future, but he had gained his own. He walked out of the room, out of the house, and did not look back. There was no round of applause from the universe. There was only the cold night air and the terrifying, thrilling, deafening sound of his own heartbeat in a life that was, at last, his to command. He had gained something no one could ever give him, and that no one could ever take away. The right to draw his own map. That choice isn't the end, it's the beginning. The real work starts when you decide your life is worth the fight, even when no one else agrees. Like, share, and subscribe if this story hit something real. And visit my YouTube channel to watch more interesting motivational, thriller, and fictional stories.